So in today's lesson, we're going to be going over a freaking awesome arpeggio that you can literally play over any chord in any chord progression that you encounter. And not only can you play it over any chord, but it's going to make you sound really, really modern and awesome. So without further ado, let's get started. It's actually a triad that we're going to be taking a look at, and it's called the sus2 triad, okay? So some of you may have heard of the concept of a sus2 triad before, but you may not have actually used it in guitar solos. So with that being said, we're going to go over this triad and we're going to go over some different ways to play it, and then we're going to show you how it is that you can actually use it over literally any chord in a chord progression. That's the cool thing about it, is just this kind of one shape that we can move around and it sounds awesome. So a sus2 triad is different than a regular triad. So in a regular triad, we have a 1, 3, and a 5. So if you watch any of my videos about triads, you know that there's different ways of making that 1, 3, and 5. Like you could have a 1 flat 3 and a 5, that makes a minor triad. Or you could have a 1, 3, and a sharp 5. That makes an augmented triad. There's different kinds of triads. The basic ones that we use most of the time are going to be major and minor and maybe diminished every once in a while. So with a sus2 triad, what we do is we actually get rid of the third in the triad. And instead we have a 1, 2, and a 5. So that gives us the sus2. So we're kind of suspending the third, almost like, bad, get out of there, third. We're suspending you. And we're going to replace the second. The third's not doing a good job. We want to get the second in there. So if you see on screen, we actually have written out there a D sus2 triad. So it has the notes D, E, and A. And right off the bat, this is a hugely important shape that you're going to learn. We're going to learn in a couple other string sets as well, because there's a slightly different fingering when you play a different string set. But you can see this thing is really, really easy to remember, and you can play it fast pretty easily too, like, and if you've ever listened to any of my playing videos, you probably heard me rattling that off a few times here and there. So I can actually play this instead of, let's say there's a D minor chord in my chord progression, I can actually play this D sus2 triad. So one more time, just so you really understand how it works, let's go ahead and analyze the notes that are going on here. So normally if we had a D minor triad, which by the way, we're going to be playing over a backing track in the key of C, and we're going to go over that chord progression in a second, but the first chord's actually going to be a D minor in that chord progression. So D minor would actually have the notes D, F, and A in it. So if you notice there's a D, E, and an A. So we had the 1, the flat 3 would be F, and then A would be the 5. But D sus2 has D, E, and A. So D is 1, E is 2, and A is 5. So that E is the sus2. So literally, it's only one note different from a minor triad. And also, by the way, it's only one note different from a major triad. So for example, when we play over this track, we're also going to be playing over a C major chord, okay? And over that C major chord, first of all, we can actually play, you'll see, we can play this sus2 triad from several different places over the chords too. We don't have to just play it based on the root, but we're going to have a C sus2 triad. So if we had a C, normally we would have a C major chord happening, like as the 1 chord in the key of C major, but instead what we're going to do is we're going to play C sus2. So normally a C major chord would be this following chord here. It would be C, E, and G. That'd be the 1, the major third, and the 5th. So again, if you understand triads a little bit, you know that the major third is in a major chord and a minor third's in a minor chord. It doesn't matter. So I can play this sus2 chord over either a minor or a major triad. It doesn't matter because we're getting rid of the third. We're getting rid of the thing that makes it major or minor. So C sus2 would be C, D, and G. So 1, 2, and 5. Okay, so that's how the sus2 triad kind of works. And now we're gonna go over some different ways to play it. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a look at this chord progression in this backing track that we're gonna be playing over. So the chord progression is going to be D minor, G7, or you could just think of it as G major, the 5 chord. It's gonna be D minor, G7, and then C major. With that being said, how can we apply this sus2 triad idea to this chord progression? Over the D minor, we're gonna play D sus 2. And we're just gonna go ahead and move this shape around, okay? So we're not even gonna change string sets. We're just gonna move this shape around. So we're gonna play this D sus 2. So we're gonna make sure that first note there is a D, okay? And then what do you think we're gonna play over G7? Again, G7 is just a dominant chord, which is a major triad that has a flat 7 on it. So we can still play that sus2. So we're gonna play a G sus2. And then finally over the C, we're gonna play a C sus2. So we can actually play literally that exact same triad shape over all this stuff. So I move this up here, boom, there's G sus2, because that first note there is G. And then I'm gonna move it down, and we're gonna have C sus2. So D sus2, G sus2, and then C sus2. So let's go ahead and play over the backing track. So you see right there that it works very, very well over all of those chords. There's certainly nothing that's clashing. Whenever you work in a concept, okay, you want to kind of blend that concept in with your normal playing. So now that I just kind of spammed only that sus2 triad, I'm gonna go ahead and solo a little bit more of that, and I'm gonna play a little bit of sus2 triad and maybe play some other stuff over it. So I'm not gonna put all the diagrams of every C major scale and all that. If you're working on this, you should probably already know your notes across the fretboard, and you should know the C major scale or the A minor pentatonic scale, something you could play in the key of C. But I'm just gonna do some of my normal soloing, but then I'm gonna throw in that sus2 triad just a little bit here. Too, that you don't always have to play all the notes in the triad. Like sometimes I like to just go between two. This kind of thing where I just break it up into maybe 2 notes, the D and the G, or the C and the D. So you don't have to always play the whole entire thing all the way through. So now that we went over that sort of concept that we can play the sus2 triad over any major chord or any minor chord, now I want to show you something which is going to be even cooler, which is that you can go through the whole entire key that you're playing in, and you can find these sus2 triads. There's a whole bunch more that we can find in the key that we can actually still play over any of these chords. The only thing is that at some points we want to be careful that there aren't any clashes, okay? And you don't have to worry about it too much because there's not really too many spots where it's gonna clash. So for what we'll do right now is actually switch string sets so that we can simultaneously cover a different shape of playing it. So this is our sus2 triad, as you can see, on the 3rd and 2nd strings. But what about in the 2nd and 1st strings? This is actually going to be really good to cover because guess what? It's going to be the same shape on every other set of strings except for the 3rd and 2nd strings. So actually, if I take this same exact C sus2 triad, I can play it over here. Boom. So now you can see that shape is very, very similar. You still have 2 notes on the lower string that we're playing. And then you have 1 note on the higher string that we're playing. And in a way, this one's almost easier to play fast because you have this opportunity to bar these 2 notes. Now, some of you might not be comfortable with this idea of a finger roll, but if you want to play this like this and you want to play it fast, like when I come back down, you want to make sure you don't let both of these ring out at the same time. That kind of makes it sound a bit sloppier. You want to make sure that every single one of those notes has a distinctive sound to it and that the previous note gets cut off before we play it. So guess what? If we go through the whole entire key of C, this is, by the way, why it's so important to know the notes on 1 string at a time, because if not, you're not going to be able to do this anywhere near as easily. We're going to go through the key of C and find all of the sus2 triads that we can possibly play, and then we're going to see how we can actually use some other ones over different chords. Like, for example, I'll just tell you right off the bat, you can actually play this C sus triad, this C sus2 triad, over the D minor chord as well. You don't just have to play D sus triad over the D minor chord. You can play a D sus triad over many other chords in the progression, and it's going to give you some really cool sounds. So we can actually have this C triad, C sus2 triad, and then if I move everything up, we have the D sus2 triad, same thing as before. Now, if we move every single note up in the key, we're going to get something that's not a sus2 triad. So if we start from E and we have E, F, and then B, that is not a sus2 triad, okay? That's something different. You could call this, I guess, a sus flat 2 triad. We're not going to get into that, but let's just see, hey, that's not a sus2 triad. So it doesn't really work if we start it from the key of, or if we start it from an E note, because if we play this note here, F sharp, well, that's not in the key, okay? Now we're going to actually try from F. So what about F? Oh, look, we can actually have an F sus2 triad. All those notes are in the key of C. F, G, and C. So we have right here, we had C sus, D sus, and an F sus. And then guess what? You should remember from before that we can do G sus, so we move everything up a whole step, and then boom, we have G sus 2. So then we have that, and then we have, if we move everything up another whole step, we have A sus 2, which also works, so we can play A sus 2. And then finally, the last one, actually, we cannot do as a sus2 triad. So if we start from B and then go like this, that's not a sus2 triad. That's a cool structure that you can totally play, but it is not a sus2 triad, okay? And the whole point of this is we want to just use the same shape over and over again. So let's write that down, actually, to see all of the different places that we can play in the key. So we can play C sus, we can play D sus, we can play F sus, we can play G sus, and we can play A sus. So if you just remember that, that's going to really, really give you a ton of stuff to work with when you're soloing. And by the way, if you want to transpose this to other keys, you should remember actually what note it starts in the key. So basically you can start it from the 1. You can play it on the 1 chord. From the 1 chord. Doesn't mean that you can't play it anywhere else over any other chord. You can play it over any of the chords, but I'm talking about finding that actual suspended structure. Starting it from the first note. We can also start it from the second note. We can also start it from the 4th. We can start it from the 5th. And we can start it from the 6th. So 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. So if you take any key that you're working on and you start from the second note or the first note or the fourth note or the fifth note or the sixth note, all of those sus2 triads are going to work perfectly in that key, okay? So with that being said now, we already figured out, by the way, you could go up here. This is the octave higher of that C sus2 triad that we were working on before. Now, I can just go through and actually try to just randomly play any of those, okay? So now I'm going to actually solo over the track, and I'm going to be indiscriminately using either of those 5 different sus2 triad options we have. We have, again, C sus, D sus, F sus, G sus, and A sus. So C sus, D sus, F sus, G sus, and A sus. So I'm just thinking of the first finger. This is C, start the shape from there. D, start the shape from there. F, start the shape from there. G, start the shape from there. A, start the shape from there, okay? So any of those are gonna work absolutely perfectly. Let's see what that sounds like. Right there, it like really worked really well. Okay, would I actually play only those sus2 triads like just like that in a solo? Probably not. Maybe for a second or two, you know, just to expand upon a musical idea. But again, we're not trying to play a great solo here. We're just trying to actually learn a new concept and integrate it into our solos, okay? So in order to do that, we need to kind of spam that concept a lot, and then it will start to come out when we're actually naturally playing. So just really quick, I said that before, this is the exact same shape that you're gonna find on the other sets of strings. So look, this C sus triad, on the middle 4 strings, the middle 2 strings, you have the 4th string and the 3rd string, boom, that's the same shape. So I can play from C sus, here's D sus would actually be here, or you could go here, of course. F sus would be here, G sus would be here, A sus. So any of those shapes, you got to remember the frets and the notes that they start from. Again, if you don't know the notes in the guitar fretboard, I don't know how much more convincing you need to start to learn it. Also, same exact shape on these 2 strings here. So C sus, D sus, F sus, G sus, and A sus. Same exact shapes. So that's the really cool thing, is that you literally just need to know 2 shapes. And then you can even do it on the lower strings. You're not going to be doing too much on the lower strings just because of how low the sound is. But here's F sus, G sus, A sus, C sus, and D sus. And you can use that shape anywhere you want. It's so freaking cool. So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and solo over this track and just incorporate the sus2 triad into my normal playing as well. So I'm not gonna be only spamming the sus2 triad. I'm gonna go ahead and actually make sure that I'm doing some other things as well. Cool if you actually take out the 5th. Just go, or if you take out the 2nd, I mean. master the guitar fretboard so that you feel absolutely 100% comfortable navigating the fretboard in any key, so you can take this idea and be able to apply it to any key effortlessly and not have to think about the notes on the neck and just know them really well, then make sure you head on over to Jamsville.com right now and get the Jamsville GPS Fretboard Fundamentals course if you want to learn how to master the guitar fretboard. Also, make sure you head on over to the Jamsville merch store and pick up a Jamsville t-shirt just like this one that I'm wearing. They're super comfortable. They fit great. They're one of my favorite shirts to wear of any shirt that I have. So make sure you check it out. We also got mugs. We got sweaters. All kinds of awesome stuff so that you can show the world that you are a member of the Jamsville community. Also, make sure you check out my new song. It's called My Divine. That's what you're listening to in the background right now. It's available on all major streaming services. So click the link in the description below to listen to it in your favorite service. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. And until next time, listen, learn, and jam.